In the highlands of south-central Guatemala, Lake Atitlán lies framed between rugged mountains and towering volcanoes. One of the most beautiful lakes in the world, Lake Atitlán is home to the Mayan people who have lived along its shores for more than 3,000 years. A proud and dignified people, the Sutuil and Cacchiquel Mayans wear their traditional handmade clothing and protectively guard their rich indigenous culture. For the visitor, the day-to-day life of the Mayan people may appear tranquil. However, today many Mayans barely eke out a living. The basic needs of food, shelter, clothing, and healthcare are an ongoing struggle. To understand the present-day situation of the Mayans of Atitlán, it is important to take a glimpse back in time. The Mayans were one of the most advanced civilizations of the ancient world. Beginning around 1800 BC, they flourished, building sophisticated societies around massive cities. At its height, the Mayan Empire stretched from southern Mexico throughout North and Central America. The arrival of the Spanish in the 1520s signaled the end of the Mayan Empire. Existing indigenous settlements throughout the Yucatan Peninsula and Central America were conquered and enslaved. Nearly 90% of the indigenous Mayan population died within the first century of the Spanish conquest. In 1821, Spanish control finally ended. For the next 100 years, Guatemala experienced a series of dictatorships and military rule. The first free elections were held in 1944, but political and economic instability persisted. In 1960, civil war broke out. For 36 years, Guatemala was torn apart by warring rebel and military factions. The government followed a scorched earth policy. Thousands disappeared. They were tortured and killed. By the time peace accords were signed in 1996, an estimated 200,000 men, women, and children had died. More than 450 Mayan villages had been destroyed, and approximately 10% of the population had become refugees. Since 1996, Guatemala has been relatively stable. Today, Guatemala is a constitutional democracy with an economy that depends on agriculture and tourism. The most populous of the Central American countries, it has the highest percentage of indigenous people. It is one of the poorest countries in Latin America, with approximately 56% of its people living in poverty. The disparity between the rich and poor is painfully evident, particularly for the Mayans in rural communities like those around Lake Atitlán. Santiago Atitlán lies on the southern shore of Lake Atitlán. It has a population of 43,000, 98% are Mayan. Most make less than $200 a month and depend on subsistence farming to feed their families of 6 to 8 children. They face serious health issues, including malnutrition, infant mortality, maternal health problems, intestinal diseases, respiratory infections, and diabetes. In the 1960s, the Catholic Archdiocese of Oklahoma City funded a small hospital in Santiago Atitlán. It quickly became an important center for inpatient and emergency health care. But when the civil war in Guatemala escalated in 1990, the hospital was closed. It was not until 2003 that a grassroots organization called Caslimal, which means life, was formed to reopen the hospital. Caslimal is now a Guatemala nonprofit foundation with a board of concerned citizens from Guatemala, the United States, and Sweden. It partnered with Pueblo a Pueblo, a United States nonprofit corporation, to refurbish the hospital. For 2 years, volunteers from around Lake Atitlán donated their time to repair, clean, and paint the buildings. In April 2005, Caslimal saw their vision become a reality when the hospital was reopened under the name of Hospitalito Atitlán. Within hours of opening its doors, Hospitalito Atitlán had patients filling its waiting room. 330 patients received medical care during the first month. The Hospitalito was positioned to become a major healthcare facility in the Atitlán area. But on October 5th, just 6 months after the hospital had opened, Hurricane Stan hit. Torrential rains flooded the area. Massive landslides swept down the steep flanks of the volcano Tolimán. at 60 to 70 miles an hour. A 7-foot-high river of water, mud, boulders, and uprooted trees surged into Santiago Atitlán, burying homes and buildings. At 6 a.m., a swell of debris and destruction slammed into Hospitalito, Atitlán. Hurricane Stan left a wake of death and devastation. Approximately 250 people died. More than 5,000 were left homeless.
In the night, we asked the people to leave their homes because the water was rising higher and higher, but they didn't think they would be harmed. Then there was a horrific noise and everything shook. A wall of mud filled with boulders and trees swept into the town. Within 2 minutes, this entire area, where approximately 300 families lived, was buried. It happened so fast that many people weren't able to get out. At the Hospitalito, the mudslide hit the stone wall and forced open the doors. Fortunately, because the wall was strong and did not collapse, there was enough time to evacuate the patients inside to higher ground. But the mud engulfed the hospital and destroyed everything in its path. Everyone had family or friends who died in the mudslide.
12-year-old Diego Mendoza was the only one of his immediate family to survive the mudslide.
The water kept rising outside our house. I said to my dad, "Let's go into town. We'll be safe there." But he didn't want to go. Then there was a big noise and everything shook. Mud poured in the window. I fought it, but it carried me out of our house. 2 men who were on the roof of their house pulled me out. I was in the hospital in Solala for 2 months. My father, mother, sister, and brother all died. I was very sad.
Hurricane Stan left the people of Atitlán in shock. The destruction of the Hospitalito was an enormous loss, especially at a time when it was so badly needed. The community that had worked so hard to open the Hospitalito was confronting a disaster no one could have anticipated. But the attitude of perseverance that had been at the heart of the building of the Hospitalito was evident in the people of Atitlán, as well as within Caslimal and Pueblo a Pueblo.
People came together, they pulled together, there were long lines of men walking out to the affected areas and digging for bodies. And at another place in town, people set up a spontaneous soup kitchen to help the people that had lost everything and also to help the people that were working to save lives of their fellow human beings.
It was so hard to see all of our hard work lost in the storm, and especially as we would go out to the neighborhood and wonder, the little boys that had helped us in the reconstruction, if we knew that some of them had died. We had 2 buildings that were going to be opened, the hospital ward and the medical storage building, in the months of November and December. And it was hard to believe we were experiencing this loss and not able to serve the community because we were closed because of the mudslide.
Well, I was volunteering for Pueblo in Washington, D.C. when Hurricane Stan hit. It was a very emotional time for everyone. We turned our website into a disaster relief, and we were quite amazed actually because 15 days after the hurricane hit, Caslimal opened up the new hospital and had their first surgery.
The months following Hurricane Stan were difficult for everyone. But in the 2.5 years since the hurricane, we have expanded our workforce with funding from Pueblo a Pueblo, as well as income from our own operations. We now have 22 staff from Guatemala, the US, Canada, and Spain. They include 4 full-time doctors, 8 nurses, and a complete support team. We are now seeing 1,000 patients a month. Here at the temporary Hospitalito, our initial work was to care for those affected by Hurricane Stan. Now, on a daily basis, our medical team handles emergencies and provides all forms of primary health care, including prenatal visits, childbirth, infant and pediatric care, routine adult care, and geriatrics. We have a well-equipped operating room, laboratory, and pharmacy. Our medical and non-medical volunteers are fundamental to our success. We have been fortunate to have a number of volunteer physicians who have come from 6 months to 2 years. Dr. Jerry Noah, a family physician from Ventura, California, is currently volunteering as our chief of staff.
Over the course of a year, we get roughly 80 medical volunteers, from medical students to residents to retired and active physicians.
Medical personnel with different specialties come for short rotations. Don Bruce, an internal medicine doctor from Monterey, California, is giving 3 weeks of his time.
Many of the women spend their entire lives indoor, or a good portion of it with a lot of exposure to smoke. So they come at age 35 or 40 with chronic pulmonary disease that you would normally in the States see at a person in their early to mid-60s.
The Hospitalito also offers educational and well-being programs that we feel are essential to the communities we serve. Our social worker is responsible for our maternal infant and midwife programs. There are approximately 950 pregnancies annually in the Santiago area. 90% of the births occur at home with a midwife. One of our missions is to reduce the infant mortality rate, which is the third highest in the hemisphere. Concepción is also a liaison between the people in the community and the hospital. She conducts needs assessment that allow those who cannot afford to pay to receive free healthcare services. We never turn anyone away. Often she visits families and children and encourages those in the community who need healthcare to come to the hospital. There have been so many cases where children's lives have been saved because we have made healthcare available to them.
In the summer of 2006, Kasli Mala decided it was too dangerous to rebuild the hospital in the same location. After carefully evaluating different sites, they acquired 5 acres of land with funds they had received from community donations and private donors. Architect David Shaley offered his help. Shaley works with Felder Group of Austin, Texas. He drew up plans that would use green concepts of solar panels for electricity, solar water heating, and gray water recycling. Architect Molly Molander, who has lived in Guatemala for the past 20 years, is now helping to implement the plans.
This is a completed drawing of what Hospitalito Atitlán will look like when it is finally completed. It is a hospital built on approximately 5 acres, and we're phasing it out into 6 separate phases. The first meeting I had with Hospitalito Atitlán and the comité really blew me away. They were very engaged. They're an educated, proud people. I just find their spirit indomitable. They're willing to put in what it takes to get this project done.
In March 2007, the first phase began with the construction of the medical equipment facility, which was funded by the Catholic Archdiocese of Oklahoma City. Kasli Mala is presently conducting a capital campaign to raise money for the next phases of building. The Guatemalan government does not provide any funding for the hospital.
The hospital is very important to the Atitlán community. We are all working to support the construction of the new facility. Our Club de Amigos has organized the Atitlán youth to gather donations from schools, churches, and individuals to purchase concrete blocks. They are close to their goal of 15,000 blocks, which will be a huge contribution to the building project. We are seeking donations from both local and international sources. The Hospitalito's Rebirth depends upon the support of both our local community and outside donors.
The Mayan people of Lake Atitlán have survived subjugation, military oppression, civil war, economic and political instability, and the devastation of natural disasters. Their ability to rise above adversity is a testimony to their remarkable resilience. Like the people it serves, Hospitalito Atitlán and its dedicated volunteers and staff have faced numerous setbacks but persevered. We at Hospitalito Atitlán believe that good health care is an inherent human right. Please support our efforts to open a new Hospitalito for the people of Lake Atitlán. On behalf of Kasli Mal, the communities of Lake Atitlán, and the Hospitalito, we thank you.